Chapter 2. I had smiled all the way back to the apartment through all the crowds. I had barely gotten home when a text message reached me, saying thanks for the nice jaw workout today. I used muscles I forgot I had. Jaw workout? So he hadn't eaten in some time? Hadn't spoken in some time? I figured it was the second one. Already I had forgotten what his face looked like. This happened a lot to me. Words and sounds stayed with me, but faces became a blur when I didn't have them in front of me. Maybe it was part of the brain damage, but why had it affected such specific parts? I could barely remember aunties' and uncles' faces, let alone dad's or his grandmother's, who I had contacted recently. When I had decided to go on a search for my dad, it was natural to try to first contact the person who had always been closest to his heart. Maybe he had told his grandmother something that he had told no one else, I figured. The way some Buddhists whispered their secrets into holes in buildings or trees. They knew that these would neither ask questions nor reveal the secrets to anyone. For a long time, I had wondered how to get in touch with her. My dad's parents were both dead already, and it was unlikely that there was any information on her on the internet. Then, one day, the universe had given me what I interpreted as a cosmic pat on the back. While scrolling my favorite Chinese news site, I discovered a headline that said, "Heart of Old Shabadi to be preserved as a relic for tourists." Beneath it was a photo of an old woman with long white hair standing beside a pink door frame. Beneath the photo were two sentences. "Old woman's dream house is now attracting visitors from all over the world. Chinese art critics describe it as an excavated jewel of postmodern art." Feverishly, I had searched for the imprint that usually contained the mail address of the site operators. After some back and forth emailing, with me pretending to be an art historian, they had given me her contact details. A few days after our first date, Suresh and I went on a snow hike. I figured he wanted to see if I was tough enough to face the elements, or just a girly girl. I dug out a knapsack, refusing to leave behind my bright scarf. "You want to strangle someone with that?" he asked when we sat on the train, a fierce flash in his eye again and a cheeky tongue tip between his teeth. "Yes, if someone doesn't behave today," I said. He chuckled. "I will try my best, madam, unless nature gets me so excited that I can't contain myself and run all the way up to the peak." "Like a mountain goat?" I asked. "Yeah, I know, because of my goat beard, right?" he said. Yesterday, he had sent me an official invitation to the trip via text message. "My ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard. My name is Mr. Socio. I am your captain today. Together with Vice Captain Mr. Brain and the whole crew, I'd like to make sure you have a pleasant trip." This was the first time I heard of Mr. Socio and Mr. Brain, though, and I abstained from asking more questions. I suspected these were people from his fantasy world who somehow trusted me enough to show themselves. I felt honored to be welcomed into someone's inner world so quickly. "So I guess Mr. Juggler had to pay the trip for Mr. Socio and Mr. Brain? He seems to be the most down-to-earth of the three." "Yes, could be he sort of manages Mr. Socio and Mr. Brain. Then again, when you are soulmates, it doesn't really matter who has to pay." He winked. "True." Today, Suresh looked smaller than last time. The long black coat had been replaced by a practical windbreaker jacket. Also, his hair was a bit wilder, his usual coif was skyrocketing over his forehead. Maybe this was Mr. Socio's influence. We had picked a good day for our outing. The sun was coming up while rows of trees rushed by the train window. My yearnings were very simple that day, to be fulfilled by some mouthfuls of fresh air, some surreptitious glances at the big yellow star, and maybe a kiss. The first occasion for the latter was in front of a little waterfall we reached around midday. However, I was not sure what the dating etiquette in India was like. Would he be shocked if I attempted something like that? In the end, I simply stood on the bridge across the waterfall and let him take a picture of me. He did it with precision, kneeling and climbing on stones to get different perspectives. He looked at the screen of his camera. "So, I think I captured an interesting animal here," he said. "What animal?" I stepped off the bridge and wandered over to him. "Look," he said. The only living creature I saw in the photo was myself. "Where is it?" I asked. "Can't you see it?" "Very prominent in the foreground, although it's normally rather an asocial animal," he said. It took another second before the penny dropped. Oh, you... I attempted to push him, but he escaped to the bridge. How would you know that I'm a social? I asked. So it's that part that bothers you, not the animal part? That's funny. He bared his teeth. We are all animals, but what makes you think that I'm a social? I asked. Simply based on what you told me. Just admit it. You rather stay home in the evenings with your favorite alien documentary than go outside. Plus, you obviously enjoy my company, and I'm the most asocial person I know. Or do you? He added in his toneless voice, eyes fixed on the ground. Yes, I do, I grinned, rolling my eyes. The hike grew steeper, snow thickening underfoot. We stopped for sandwiches. For a while, we just sat there, silently chewing. Suresh seemed to be absorbed by the surroundings, the dense wood, the smooth plate of the lake a few 100 meters beneath. When we got to the cookies, he plucked a hair from the back of my coat. His hand seemed to come out of nowhere. I hadn't even noticed that he had fixed his attention back at me. Wow, I could easily make a carpet out of those, he said. A flying carpet, maybe. Then we don't need to go back down the mountain, I said. Haha. He inspected the hair and then put it into the now empty plastic bag that had contained the sandwiches. All this he did with the same precision he had displayed when arranging the cutlery in the restaurant the other day. Did you just... I frowned. Yes, if you allow. I like to keep little personal things that remind me of the other person. After all, don't you think that all this organic substance we lose every day isn't far too precious? Every day we're losing so much of ourselves, and we don't even seem to care about it, Suresh said. Maybe his problems are similar to mine, I thought. Maybe the faces he saw also blurred when they were out of his sight, and that's why he needed these little reminders. But you're not some forensic analyst, are you? I asked. Ha ha, nah. My father's a chemistry professor, hence maybe the fascination for organic material. He twisted the hair between his fingers. But you've got more of a passion for programming? I asked. I don't know. It just seemed the most practical thing to study when I started university, he said. You're too practical for your own good, indeed, just like you wrote in your profile, I said. Maybe. He seemed lost in thought, as if he had already forgotten what he had written in his profile. 2 hours later, we sat on the bus taking us back to the train station. I hope this doesn't take too long. I'm already quite tired, I said. I don't think so. Anyway, remember, you're in excellent company. He grinned. That I am, for sure. I tried to catch his eyes, but he had already looked away. Had he even been looking at me at all? It was hard to tell with his glasses shielding his gaze. Outside, the night had made all the corners warm and soft. It was seeped in a warm vintage brown, here and there interspersed with the glimmering lights of the small villages on the feet of the mountains. Though my hands were cold, I was glowing inside. For the first time, Suresh was not sitting opposite, but next to me. I could feel the warmth coming off his body. The relaxed weakness of my limbs and the warm glow in my body allowed my boldness. By the way, you have nice skin, I said to him. I think I might get off the bus now. Bye, he said. He was looking straight ahead, speaking with his toneless voice again. I laughed. What? Can't you take a compliment? Somehow the English language allowed me to ask for such things. With Chinese, I was not so sure. It sounded much less demanding, much less straightforward. It was a cadence of tones and melodies, and you had to be careful not to end a sentence on a flat note. He turned his head to me, but looked away as soon as I caught his eyes, with a turn of his head that was so abrupt that it almost startled me. I laughed again. Yes, keep on doing that. That's not suspicious at all, I said. For a few seconds, he looked straight ahead, with his eyes seemingly fixed on nothing. Then, he felt safe enough to at least make a half-turn in my direction. He repeated the staring game a few times before we got off the bus. Every time I tried to lock eyes with him, he quickly turned his head in an almost robotic response. Are you cold? He finally asked. No. But of course, I couldn't let this opportunity of a tease go to waste, not in my current state of sun and walking-induced relaxedness. What would you do if I was? I asked. He turned his head again, this time towards the window. Okay, I'll go now. I think that you'll find your way home on your own. I had to giggle again while he was just staring with no recognizable facial expression. He had rested his legs against the seat in front of him and was staring out of the window when he spoke. Lean forward a bit, please, he said. Huh? I straightened in my seat. It wasn't until he clicked an imaginary camera that I realized that my head had appeared beside his in the window pane. You know, in this way, I'll remember this for a long time, he said. You have a photographic memory? I asked. Kind of, I think, he said. For a while he kept silent, staring out of the window. I looked down the aisle. Only a few seats were occupied. The lights above us were flickering tiredly. There's another thing I'm really good at, he said. And what is that? I raised one eyebrow. Palm reading. I burst into laughter. So, you're a New Age guy after all? Then we fit together wonderfully. I'm also interested in the occult. He had already scolded me for thinking that every Indian guy was either a vegetarian or doing daily meditation. God, you make me suffer for every little thing I say. Give it already, he said. Give what? I asked. Your hand, stupid. I swerved my hand in his direction, and he took it into his right hand, tracing the lines on my palm with his left one. Just now, I realized what big hands he had. They did not really seem to match with his raw-boned limbs. His hands were made for driving that motorcycle he had mentioned via text, but the rest of his body wasn't. What do you see? I asked. I think I need to warm them up a bit first, he said. He took my fingers between his two giant palms. For a few minutes, we were sitting next to each other without moving or saying anything, not even looking at each other. It felt strange that he had a part of me while I didn't have any of him. I slowly lowered my head on his shoulder. Again, his face seemed very far away. Is it okay if I do this? I'm kind of tired, I said. Of course. He continued to stroke my hand mechanically, patiently, while staring at the back of the seat in front of him, seemingly lost in thought. Once in a while, he turned to me, but now the game was different. Instead of looking at me and looking away as soon as I noticed, he leaned his head toward mine, only to quickly pull away again as soon as our skulls touched through our thick hair, as if he had received an electric shock. Apparently, he had also been staring at me again, because after a while he said, You don't seem to be sleeping. I chuckled mildly. My whole body seemed to rest in some kind of soft honeycomb. Maybe that was just an excuse for resting my head on your shoulder. I see, so you're the scheming type, he said. It was not an ironic tease this time, but an affectionate statement. His voice had gone softer now, too, almost a whisper. I think you were scheming too, or do you really know palm reading? I asked. Well, I can see that you have a bright future ahead of you, he said. I could almost sense that he was grinning again. I knew that already, I said. The train pulled into Grand Central. Lights started to glide by the windows, as if flashlights were being waved at us. I started to get nervous. No kiss had yet been exchanged, and once we were out there in the mass of people, that wouldn't happen anymore. We were not in the 40s anymore, where every day was crucial, and soldiers used to kiss women in the streets because they had to go to war the next day. So this time I didn't ask for permission, but placed a peck on his smooth brown cheek. He displayed not even the slightest body movement and continued to stare at the seat in front of him. I figured he was not used to women taking the initiative. Just as I was about to pull away from him, he wrapped his right arm around my shoulders and pulled me towards him. It felt more like a hug one would give a good friend or a child, though, with his gaze still fixed on the seat in front of him. The train came to a halt. Outside, people were rushing by. Suresh, though, made no intention to get up, still staring and pondering. When I stood in the aisle, looking at him impatiently, he slowly got up and grabbed his backpack from the rack. It was here, in Grand Central Station, where New York looked more civilized and dignified than anywhere else in the city. It's as if the settlers had started here, on a good footing, only to realize someday that the city was gliding more and more out of their hands, forming strange offshoots that they couldn't control anymore. Suresh accompanied me to my platform through the main hall, which felt more like an international crossroads than anywhere else in the world. At airports, everything was neatly organized. Arriving and departing people used different lanes, rode on far-stretched moving staircases, didn't come into contact with each other. Here, at Grand Central, briefcases brushed against trouser legs, dogs' tongues licked shiny leather shoes, drops of ice cream landed on blouses. At the same time, it seemed like a place where people could disappear without a trace. Here, you were only a moving surface for the briefcases, the dogs' tongues, and the ice cream drops, a means to satisfy the people's hidden desires to be close to someone. It was one of the places where I had most often fantasized about being beamed up into the sky. Why I had this fantasy, I didn't know. Suresh stood opposite me on the platform, his eyes resting on me. He was at least 5'9" tall. When we hugged, he murmured something into my ear, but the words were torn from me by the wind of the arriving train. When I took my seat, he was still standing on the platform, not looking at me directly, but at the train as a whole with a slightly pained expression on his face. It seemed as if he wanted to say to the vehicle, "Take her home safely, will you?" Then the train started to move and he glided out of sight. Approximately 15 minutes later, the display said, Fulton Street. I knew that we were now directly under Ground Zero. A strange story had appeared in the newspapers after the 9/11 attacks. One firefighter claimed to have seen a nurse wandering about in the ruins of the towers. He insisted that she had been dressed in 1930s nurse garments. When he tried to approach her, she dissolved into smoke. Maybe, in a few years, people would say that Ground Zero is the most haunted place in New York. Right now, everything was under construction. The banging of the builders was so incessant that the ghosts fled the site. They needed quiet, even more so than the living. My cell phone beeped. New message. "Thanks for your companionship today, and for the cold, warm train trip," it said. Just at this moment, the train began to rumble, a sign that it was changing direction, heading towards Brooklyn. A moment later, my cell phone beeped again. Oh, and I just learned that GOAT can also stand for greatest of all time. "So, thank you, I guess," the message said. As we were gliding along beneath the East River, something warm filled my insides. Although I didn't know exactly what to make of him yet, this Suresh seemed more interested in me than the other standoffish guys I had met in this cold city, and he seemed just crazy enough to help me with my quest.